You know, there's one proven way to win your fantasy league. It's quite simple, really. Draft the running backs that are going undervalued. Last year, this was Josh Jacobs, who was often taken in the 5th round and scored the 3rd most running back points. He was on 20% of championship teams, the definition of a breakout. In this video, we'll cover the 5 running backs that you need to draft who are most likely to break out in 2023. And we can start with Ravens running back J.K. Dobbins, who is ready to break out. Now look, he missed 9 games in 2022 because of a injury that he had in 2021. He didn't play in any games, a knee surgery, and he was still rehabbing. But he was quietly great in his 8 active games. See for yourself. Dobbins ranked 4th in rushing efficiency, top 10 in yards per touch, and 2nd in missed tackles per touch. And now this is what that actually resulted in. Over his final 5 games, as you can see his point totals on the right side of the screen, he averaged 13.5 points and was a top 20 running back 3 times. And at 13.5 points per game would rank 16th amongst running backs last year. But this is odd because Dobbins currently goes as the running back 18 in drafts. And in a lot of drafts, he's not even taken in the top 24 running backs. Now, some people might be concerned about the injury, but you shouldn't be. You can see from Sports MD Analysis on Twitter right here, his #1 point about J.K. Dobbins, the data suggests high 2023 expectations, now 2 years removed from his knee injury. Not to mention, the Ravens had 6 draft picks this year, and you can see across the positions columns, 0 running backs were taken, and they didn't sign any new running backs. 2023, their only move in free agency was Justice Hill, who they already had. They re-signed him to a 2-year deal worth $4 million, nothing crazy there. So the simple takeaway is that Dobbins is the clear running back 1 in last year's #7 rush offense. Take him in round 5. And there's Cam Akers, who, believe it or not, he's a surprisingly great pick, because right now Akers goes as the running back 24 in drafts after guys like DeAndre Swift, and look, this is a mistake. It's actually really strange when you consider how he finished his 2022 season. Over his final 6 games, as you can see in the left-hand column right here, Akers averaged 18 fantasy points. When you take into account his total touches, receptions, and rush attempts, he had 19.2 touches per game, and total yardage with receiving yards and rushing combined, 102 total yards per game, which led to him ranking 4th in running back fantasy points during that time. Only Austin Eckler, Jerick McKinnon, who ran hot on touchdowns, but he was in a Patrick Mahomes offense, and Christian McCaffrey had more points. Top 5 overall. A lot of people are sleeping on Akers. Now, Akers was coming off of an injury last year. As you can see right here in 2021, July 19th, before the season started, he had an Achilles tear, which is usually like a 2-year recovery for full explosiveness. But Akers started to look fully healthy 100% towards the end of last year. And this is something that Sports MD Analysis on Twitter also agrees with. He kind of touches on the 2 years for many running backs to get back, but last year we already saw it with Akers averaging 136 yards and a touchdown per game to close the season. And then this final point is what I really want to touch on above my head. Expect a return to pre-Achilles trajectory, which was easily him being a top 20 running back 2 years ago. But as we touched on earlier, Akers goes after the top 20 running backs in drafts, and look, he has no competition. This is currently the competition in the Rams backfield for Cam Akers. It starts with Zach Evans, a 6th round rookie running back. Look, he might have some upside, but a 6th round pick isn't immediate competition. And then there's 2nd-year player Kyren Williams, who's smaller, slower, and inefficient last year, and Ronnie Williams, who has just 9 career carries. This is Akers' backfield, especially after the hot end to 2022. So your takeaway is to take Akers in round 7, and now let's talk about the best middle round running back, and that would be Isaiah Pacheco, who currently goes in round 7 of fantasy drafts after guys like Dameon Pierce and DeAndre Swift, which is a major mistake because Pacheco is the running back 1 for Patrick Mahomes. And Mahomes' starting running backs average 1.3 touchdowns per game in his career. And Pacheco was the primary back for Kansas City in the final 10 games, and he averaged 11 fantasy points, and when you combined his receiving and rushing yards, his total yards over 80 yards per game. Now, this doesn't account for his postseason success. Let me show you something. In the AFC Championship against the Bengals, he led the backfield as an undrafted rookie, by the way, with 10 carries. Next closest guy was Jerick McKinnon with just 4. And he was active in the receiving game with 5 catches for 59 yards, 6 targets. So he had a massive game in the AFC Championship. But that's not all, because in the most important game of the year, the Super Bowl, Pacheco had 15 carries, 11 more than any other running back, 76 yards and a touchdown, averaged over 5 yards a clip. He was fantastic. The point being, they trusted him in their most important games. But that's not all, because Kansas City didn't draft or sign any new running backs this offseason. They did bring back Jerick McKinnon, but this is his only competition. McKinnon, who's 31 years old, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who was nothing last year. Pacheco already beat him out, and he was 52nd in running back efficiency. So right now, Isaiah Pacheco's only competition is 2 guys he already beat out last year as an undrafted rookie, and now he's going to start this year as the main guy in Kansas City. All right, now let's talk about the Bills' 2nd-year player. There was a 2nd-round pick last year in James Cook, who's really interesting because he was fantastic as a rookie. Now, this was on limited touches, but he was one of the most efficient running backs in the league. 2nd in true yards per carry, that's his rushing efficiency, and then when you factor in his receiving efficiency, 3rd in yards per touch, touch, 6.3 yards per touch, which means only Breece Hall and DeAndre Swift were more efficient running backs in 2022. Now these guys, Breece Hall and Swift, go in round 3 and 5 of fantasy drafts, but Cook doesn't go until round 8 after guys like Javonte Williams, who might miss 8 weeks, and Alvin Kamara, who might be suspended 8 weeks. Now look, here's what you need to know about James Cook. As a rookie last year, he led the entire NFL in explosive run rate. His runs of 15 plus yards, 44% of his carries went for 15 plus yards. And he was right ahead of guys like Kenneth Walker, Breece Hall, and Tony Pollard. I mean, this is the company this guy was in, but nobody looks at him the same way, even though he's just as explosive and also has above average receiving ability, but it's because of his concerns. And those concerns start right here. He was just 54th in red zone touches with only 16 total last year and only 11 red zone carries. It doesn't help that his quarterback, Josh Allen, had 11 touches inside the 5-yard line and by far led the Buffalo Bills last year. But it's not just Josh Allen that's a threat in the red zone, because the Bills signed Latavius Murray and Damian Harris. Damian Harris is around 220 pounds, and this guy has a 15 touchdown season on his resume. And then there's Latavius Murray, who's around 225 pounds, and he's had at least 5 touchdowns in 8 straight seasons. Now this obviously caps Cook's upside, and here's your takeaway. Cook still has the talent and environment to break out. The Bills don't have a number 2 wide receiver. Now this is where Cook can thrive, because a target is worth 2.5 times more than a rush attempt in fantasy football. Now that doesn't mean specifically in your rule scoring. It means on average, when a player sees a target, it goes for 2.5 more points because of the reception points and more yards per catch on average. Now, we got one more player who might be the ultimate breakout running back, but before we get there, because I'd like to let you know about the fantasy blueprint, which is out now. And if you want to win your fantasy league, this is for you. It has all the tools you need to both prepare for your draft and dominate every single week up until your championship. And I would like to make this a no-brainer for you. If you don't make your fantasy playoffs, I will refund your payment for the blueprint, whether it's $5 or $10, depending on when you're watching this. This is 100% risk-free. And it's simple to get your blueprint. You just click the link in the description below and follow the 2 simple steps to acquire your fantasy blueprint this year. All right, now let's get into that final breakout RB. And that will be Brian Robinson, who currently goes in round 10 of fantasy drafts. And Robinson led the Commanders in running back snaps the final 11 games. And during this time, he averaged 10 fantasy points. His combined touches of his receptions and rush attempts were 18.6, and his total yardage was 76 total yards. It's pretty rare to get a running back like this in the 10th round of your drafts. But that's not all, because his backfield competition hasn't even improved. These are the only other 2 running backs worth mentioning in the Commanders' backfield. You obviously have Antonio Gibson, but he was 64th in running back efficiency last year. And then Chris Rodriguez, well, he's a 6th round rookie and not that much of a threat. And it's also worth noting that JD McKissic is no longer with the team. Now, there are some reasons why he's going this late, so let's discuss those concerns. Robinson only had 9 catches as a rookie, and if you follow the fantasy cheat codes, receptions and red zone usage, well, this isn't great, just 9 receptions. But we know he can catch passes because his final year at Alabama, he had 35 receptions, which is above average for college running backs. Like, anything over 25 is good, over 30 is great. Now, another concern might be that Brian Robinson was pretty inefficient as a rookie. I mean, he ranked 56th out of all running backs on his rushing efficiency, true yards per carry, and 53rd in his yards per touch when you factor in those 9 receptions. There's 2 pretty clear reasons for this. Number 1 is that the Washington Commanders offensive line ranked 24th in run blocking last year. He was getting hit behind the line of scrimmage often. And then number 2, well, he was shot before the season started in the leg, in the kneecap. So yeah, that probably affected his efficiency. So quite simply, expect more efficiency as he's healthier and has more experience heading into year 2. Now, these are the running backs that are about to break out this year, and you want to have them on your team before your friends do. Now, you should also be aware of the wide receivers who are primed to break out this year, and that's exactly what this video is going to help you identify. Now, as you complete this video and go on to this next one, be sure that you're subscribed to this channel to stay up to date on all the content that keeps you ahead of your buddies.